welcome to the Finance Committee meeting for June the 7th, covering the month of April. So we'll do a roll call.
Director Brown.
Here.
Director Jeffrey. Here. Thank you.
And do we have anybody online from the public?
We do not have anyone on Zoom, and I didn't receive any comments via email.
So there are no pending questions or other issues then. All right. So let's go ahead and start. And with regard to report number 1, April compared to March, balance sheet comparison. Total liabilities and equity for April was $12,444,830. Liabilities and equity for March was $12,367,032 for a month-to-month increase of $78,798. The income statement report 2. Total net income for the month of April is a positive $74,364.88. Essentially, we are ahead of plan. And this is due in part, smaller than expected, property tax apportionment. So that means we had a little less revenue.
Right, we also had less, we were decrease on our budgeted expenses.
Fair enough, which gave us a net ahead of plan by 74,000. Very good. Report 3, profit and loss actual versus budget. Based upon the approved budget, the district is over budget in year-to-date net income by $432,974. That's a good thing. Report number 4, the annual operating budget for 2022-23 fiscal year has no changes in the operating. Report number 5, the LAIF account statement. LAIF posted $11,187.78 in quarterly interest earnings. The cost value is $2,495,926,083, with a fair market value of $2,462,257.60. The performance rate for the month of April was 2.87%. That's pretty good.
That's good.
Yeah. Right. Report number 6, the CalTrust account statement. The cost basis for this account is $5,815,491.33. The district earned $14,689.12 in dividend income this month and an unrealized gain of $5,785.12, bringing the portfolio's total value to $5,678,326.21. As of April 2023, the 1-year yield on the medium-term fund where these funds are allocated was 2.15%. Much improved, yeah.
It should improve.
What do you think that is? Is that just
Market factors.
Mm-hmm.
We've been sitting on the 8.
So do you think that what the market has been doing with regard to the debt discussions and issues is going to have a negative effect
I
for us?
don't know. I was just listening to Yellen and one of the other business advisors this morning, and it's unknown, you know. This conundrum with the unemployment being so low, and inflation is still growing, and we can't toggle those things too much. It's got them all a little mystified. So we're gonna have to see how this runs out.
I think a lot will have to do with what the Federal Reserve decides to do with interest. Because they've really signaled that they're not going to increase rates for the time being.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Already, property tax report number 7. Property tax revenue. The district accrued a tax apportionment of $141,580.75 for April. I'm counting the pennies now because I think that's important. We need every penny, right?
Yeah.
Report number 8, the check detail report. I didn't see any outstanding issues there that were
No.
terribly remarkable.
On that active power solutions, are those the folks who are coming to
No,
present? That's a different power.
yeah, Active Power Solutions is the electrician that's been doing the lighting out at the wellness center.
Gotcha, yeah. That's why I recognized it.
Is that part of the project pretty well wrapped up? Doing the light fixtures and all kinds of.
On the education building, yes. So they're in process of prepping for painting as of tomorrow, I think he starts.
In the afternoon.
And then they'll be working through that, but all the lighting is done over there. There's the only thing that we may come back are for some of the classrooms where we haven't upgraded the ceiling lights yet. And that is pending what we see with our facility user.
I'm a little bit anxious that I haven't noticed this before. Apportionment received 692,000. What is that?
Apportionment received is the property tax information that we received.
Up to this point this year?
No,
It's the 1 month.
that's the one that came in April, even though we booked it in
Gotcha.
March. Remember,
Okay.
it comes,
Gotcha.
they tell us it's coming and
Yeah.
then it actually shows up.
Okay, now I'm with you. I'm just used to seeing a bunch of minuses.
Yeah.
Can't have the minuses without at least one positive in
Yeah,
there.
there you go.
Just like
Can't have
that,
one without the other.
that bottom line just happens, since I'm looking up the report payment for Alvarado,
Right,
same thing.
yes.
That was that wired funds.
So any other outstanding questions or issues on the detail
No.
report?
I'm good to go. Thank you.
Let's look at the visa statement, the report number 9. Anything extraordinary there, executive director?
No, it's pretty much our standards.
Yeah.
We had a couple of things for purchases for the public forum, as far as some of the
Mhm.
Sam's Club things. Otherwise, it's our basic expenditures.
Okay,
Seeing the Alvarado payment of
Yes.
100,000. Just a sidebar here, I can't tell you how devastating it must be for him having to do all this work due to the heavy rain, and how glad I am we don't have to do any of that work. Oh my gosh.
you know, and you can bet that he's doing it. He's insisting on a good quality job, because now he
He's living it,
really fully invested in that,
Yeah.
that building, yeah.
yeah, so I can't imagine. Okay,
Report number 10, the Community Investment Funds report for April. This report shows utilized funds invested in the district's real estate, primarily for the development of the Community Health and Wellness Center, including maintenance, repairs, permits, and consultants. For the fourth quarter, there was $71,302.72 spent. And that was the same that we reported last month, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was a few more expenditures in April, but this just adds to it. We rolled with, so we'll have a final closeout when we add June to it.
And at what point in time are we going to do a transfer?
We'll probably do the transfer in June.
I recognize all of those from past facility reports too, so that looks good.
So even though we're in the June finance meeting, remember, we won't actually see June financials until we're in next fiscal year.
Right.
So that's where we look to our accounting professionals to say, could you put that in the right bucket?
Yeah.
I have to make hand motions.
Well, that's your accrual vision, that's your
Mhm.
sign language for.
Yeah,
For
accrual.
Yes. Thank you for.
American
interpreting the-
Rachel sign language.
It's very idiosyncratic.
And that'll be when we'll see if we landed the plane well for 22, 23.
Yeah, in the
Cause that'll be the
August,
end of,
you'll see
yeah,
the
the final
June
report.
financials. We are obviously working now internally to make sure that we're getting all of the invoices that are for this fiscal year, all the bills for this fiscal year, the checks written in this fiscal year. We do as much that chasing down That's the only time we chase down people to say, hey, we owe you money. Do you wanna get paid?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you send me the bill when you're ready.
Mhm.
So in that same note, then with regard to talking about report number 3, again, our P and L statement. So we are ahead of plan, year to date through April 30th
Correct.
by $432,000. Unless there's any big surprises for May and for June, we should expect to end the fiscal period certainly
Pretty close to
target.
operating plan.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're gonna land the plane on the runway.
Well, there's plenty of ways to land the plane.
I know, but on
You
the
can do
runway,
it.
not in a ditch somewhere. That's the hope.
Yes. Disclosures, the investments of the district are in compliance with the district's 2022-23 investment policy. The balances in the district's investment accounts give the district the ability to meet its expenditure requirements for the next 18 months. Probably the next 18 years. But that's okay. It's all good. And I don't think we have anything more with regard to the
The report.
treasurer's report on the numbers.
Correct.
I'm good. You good?
Well done.
So let's move on, if we could, to discussion items number 5. And so we want to talk about our 5-Star Bank opening amount.
Correct.
And attendant to that is the transfer amount to the California class
Correct.
investment account. And then we can talk about the updated investment policy.
Yeah.
So any thoughts with regard to the 5-Star Bank account? I mean, we're just gonna throw some cash in there and then it's gonna be going back and forth.
Yes, it's gonna be our,
I'm suggesting we just throw 10 grand in each one of them, and let it roll.
Well, we'll actually need to probably do significantly more.
Oh, darn.
I know, sorry. So this is in relation to the checks that you all just signed. What we're noticing is that, we did a very quick cash flow kind of analysis. Cash flow is not something we've had to look at here.
Right.
Right, but by moving that excess of funds out of Pacific Western and sending it over to Lake during the banking instability, which frankly has not affected us, but was good best practice to get back in line. What we discovered is by having those checks that were being signed today, which had some unusual activity, budgeted but unusual, right? We're discovering that if we want to fund 5-Star to truly be that backup bank situation for us, with the checks that you've just signed and our current bank balance, we would technically be short about 75,000 right now. All right. Again, we know that that's an unusual situation, so just gonna walk you through some quick math logic here. In July, which is in a minute, we have our very first community health grant distribution.
Yeah.
That first distribution for Q1 is about 142,000.
Okay.
So if we take the 142,000 and the amount that we are already short, the 75, that essentially means that we would need to transfer a minimum of 218,000 just to meet those basic expenses. We can, based on history, know that our property tax revenue for July and August are usually pretty low. 30,000 is what we do. So if we want to, from a strategy standpoint, know that 5-Star Bank is our holding. Right.
So let's go ahead and pull that amount out of the LAPE account, put it in the 5-Star,
Yes.
and then at our leisure and as necessary, we can pull it out or into Pacific Western. So you want to be able to pull 75,000 out now.
Well, what I'd like to see us do to be prepared so that we're not pulling each month, so that we're leaving that in those investment accounts. If we fund the 5-Star Bank at 250, that covers this expected dip. If we go ahead and fund back to Pacific Western Bank, the 500,000, that'll cover this first initial distribution as well. Keep in mind, we're budgeted, not that you have this number memorized, we're budgeted for July to be about $400,000 in the red because we don't see the income just for that 1 month.
Mhm.
So if our 5-star bank has 250 and we bring another 500 back to Pacific Western, that'll cover our current liabilities and our expected July shortfall. That way we don't probably need to go back to investments to refund those for at least, hopefully, not at all for Q1 during the upcoming fiscal year. So that's kind of I'd rather be a little bit fill it right now because we know that the fall months are a little bit lean when it comes to property tax.
Mhm.
And that'll allow us to be ahead of it.
Right.
So that when funds do start coming back in, we can then pull those funds again out and transfer them back as necessary.
So how much would we be putting into Pacific Western?
We'd be putting 500 into Pacific Western. That would cover the expected shortfall of the 218.
Mhm.
And that would have then pretty much drop us below
The
the
250,000
250
guaranteed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty in a very short order.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what my thought was.
Yeah. And then that way we wouldn't have to dip into 5-star quite as quickly.
Mhm.
And we do want to have as much calmness around our investments, uninterrupted progress on that, so.
Correct.
I see where you're going with this. And there's a logic to it and seems like the right thing to
Yeah,
do.
it seems like the right.
It's logical.
Yeah,
I like logic.
I'm good with that.
And is this something that would come to our board colleagues or are we empowered to?
I think it would probably, because it's an unusual activity for us. I think it's a smart thing if we make the recommendation from the finance committee to the board so that it can be voted on next week. If we were a month out from a board meeting, I'd be maybe a little different, but I think we're fine. I do obviously want to get these final checks
Yes.
out. So I think next week would be sufficient. If
Okay.
you're comfortable with that. That follows our standard practice.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
I have a question on that, sorry, so does that mean we're holding checks until next week? then?
We're gonna hold the big
one?
the big
Well,
one.
the big one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Feels good for me. Good to go.
Okay.
Okay.
Instead of calling it, unusual, it's called extraordinary.
Our extraordinary activity.
Because unusual means that, oh, there's something that we screw up or something.
No, our
But extraordinary means just
Yeah,
nothing
there
out
you
of the
go.
ordinary.
Not a problem. Let's make sure we use
Extraordinary. Say it
extraordinary.
together. Extraordinary.
Yeah.
Say it together. Extraordinary.
Oh my
That's
God,
a very good choice.
Did you hear the teacher come out right? Oh. You're killing me, you're killing me.
Extraordinary.
So then because that then rolls into discussion item B, the transfer amount to California class.
Mhm.
We essentially transferred into LAIF. We transferred into LAIF 1.8 million within the last 6 months.
Mhm.
Now I realize we basically just talked about taking 750 back out.
Mhm.
There's a pretty amazing growth that California class has seen. So while we were excited to see the 2 whatever % on CalTrust and LAIF, Judith, you wanna tell them what?
They're
We've been-
offering, the 30-day yield on the class is 5.16%.
What are they investing in?
Well, they're investing in the same pools that the other two products are. But because they are the newer game in town, their treasuries, their bonds have been purchased at the better rate and aren't being sold at a loss.
Oh, because
Where
they're
some
new
of
to
the
the
others,
race.
because they're new due to their maturities, which is why they're seeing an unprecedented growth just because of when they got into the market.
Mhm.
In our meeting with Bob Scholl, just this last week, Last week.
Tuesday.
Judith asked him to shake the magic 8 ball and say, how long are you prognosticating?
How long are you expecting these yields to last at this rate? And he was looking at about a 1 year span. You know, obviously, we would have to keep track of how the rates are moving along as well. And he was saying, like, you know, obviously, since we're having high interest rates, they go side by side, and you can keep experiencing that until he starts lowering them. And then at that point, then it's up to us, and we would like to move our investment around.
So knowing that we're expecting probably a good year of this continued growth,
With class.
with class, it makes sense with California class. It makes sense to potentially fund it a little bit deeply, which we can do from LAIF and or CalTrust. So our current CalTrust balance as of 5/31 was 5.6 million. LAIF was 3.3 million. Now, this brings a slightly different conversation into it, which has to do with what is the purpose of each account. Historically, LAIF was where a lot of the monies that were gonna be to and from in shorter order. And CalTrust was more the little bit medium holding term. And I say medium and not long term because there was an expectation in the shorter medium term, those investment funds would be withdrawn and put into redevelopment. Well, since we have adjusted course on the redevelopment timeline, now is our opportunity to potentially reset where some of those funds are. So we could, you all could decide whether you want to go from LAIF or CalTrust. What's the purpose of each account? If we know California class is showing a better yield and is likely to for at least another year, CalTrust is sitting in that medium zone.
Yeah.
And LAIF has been really designed for liquidity.
Yeah, there's no doubt that the aperture has changed for us, and we don't want the funds to languish, and they're languishing in
Or the language
CalTrust.
at 2%.
at 2%. And because of timing, we have a chance to hitch our wagon to 5%. It's almost like one question to test is, why don't we move all of LAIF? Because there's no added safety to LAIF compared to A, right?
They're all equally secure and risk averse. So if we're going to go ahead and pull the essentially 750 to fund the 5-star and to replenish Pacific Western, we could then also move about $1 million out of LAIF to fund California class, and that would essentially kind of rebalance where we were with our previous investment proportions, if you will.
Yes, as a floor, I'm getting you. I want to test the idea of why we wouldn't move more with this offer. Because it's a little bit like two avocado trees. One has had the avocados on and it's been on the tree longer. And then we have this new tree that's grown up and it's producing more. So I guess my question would be, why wouldn't we move more into the 5% plus bearing possibility? Why, what would be the downside of that?
That, my dear, would be the discussion of the day, of the week. Certainly there's no doubt about putting a sufficient amount of money into the 5-star account. I mean, that's pretty straightforward, and we get all that. The class, how long have they been in business? What have they been doing for the last?
Well, they're a little over a year old, this particular pooled class.
Okay. To my mind, we might be walking away from 2 or 3 extra percent, 2.5%, possibly. Is it still the right thing to do with the district's money.
Right, that's the question.
We want to be able to, benefit reasonably what we can with the resources and the assets of the district. By the same token, we have a very strong responsibility to protect it at all costs. It is not, you don't need me to tell you, it's
Yeah.
not our money.
Yeah,
We're not in the business of earning interest. That's a side benefit of being able to have this extra cash. So if there's any downside, of any sort with the class account, I'd feel uncomfortable putting a whole lot of money in there, that's just my gut feel.
Keep in mind, we will, just as added info, we will have the expectation of increased redevelopment costs coming in the upcoming year with the parking lot solar infrastructure piece. Typically, we would replenish out of LAIF for that. So, if we remove the $750 that we're talking about funding those other accounts, that's gonna put the LAIF account at $2,613,000. So you could decide to split that to whatever level you're comfortable.
I like that.
So just doing this math for you here,
Yeah.
so you're knowing what the balance
And
is.
then let Leif ride a little while and monitor it. Maybe putting in half of that would be 1.3. So put half of that into the A and leave the remaining to fund the parking lot process. Is that kind of what you're putting on the table?
I'm saying we could, since we don't know yet what the expenditure for that full project will look like.
And it's not gonna happen all at one time.
Oh,
Right.
no.
It's gonna be spread out.
It's gonna be spread
We're
out.
quite a little bit away. So really of that 2.6, as I see it, our question to you would be, what amount of that, since it seems no one's really interested in moving anything out of CalTrust, moving what amount out of that 2.6 do you want to fund California class? And that can be any amount.
Yeah.
Okay.
But because of the high yield, it would be nice to be able to have just one snapshot of a window to gain some additional funds to support development costs. As we start to look at expanding some of the services or programs, especially as we start investigating some of the MOU possibilities for programming, this could provide us new seed money for some of those startup costs.
So back to what amount are we feeling comfortable in, putting into the class, investment account? All right. I may have a number, but you know, it's, at this point, it's arbitrary. I'm really feeling that it's a, 5-person discussion.
Yeah.
Without,
Yeah.
I mean,
We might go with a starting point. Would you feel, is your instinct okay with $1 million?
I'm feeling very uncomfortable with that.
750,000?
You know, who could sit, how much are we prepared to put at potential risk of that? And I get it's not gonna.
Yeah, there's
Flush
really
down.
no risk.
They're actually swimming in the same
They're the same
lake.
They're
you know.
the same lake, yes.
And we've also asked them for a copy of their audited financials, because I'm with you, like, what is in there that I am not seeing? Why are we getting such a great deal? And I was a little uncomfortable with the, it being so new. I was like, well, if you're so new and you're showing a shiny quarter, why is a shiny quarter here for me?
Yep.
So I asked him for a copy of his audited financials to take a look, and I was asking him about what assets is it, or what specific, what are you investing in that is getting you such a phenomenal return? He did give us the explanation, which he shared with you about it being the short term, the timing, but I still kind of wanted to see what else was in there, because he did go over, we're following the exact same guidelines and sections of the law that protect CalTrust. And he gave me the section number. I did some research because, I don't know that one specifically, but it looks, once I looked at them, they're above the the requirements for California requires, I think, AA or AAA, and they're slightly above that. There's another initial that they have, so I'm like, okay, they're meeting all the standards there. So the last piece of the puzzle was, can I see a copy of your audited financials, which he's supposed to get to us in a couple days. Because there is that level of discomfort when something is that new. So I wanted to see those, and then say like, you know, yeah, let's be super comfortable with it.
So those will be coming in when?
What did you say?
I wanna say within a week
I
or
think within a
so,
week.
they're trying to, finish up the March statements or
March
something.
30th,
March
statement, I
30th.
believe, so he's gonna get it off to us within the next few days. So that's-
Well, it's not as if this is gonna vanish into the wild blue yonder. I mean, they're in this for the long haul, apparently.
Absolutely, yeah.
So maybe we need to wait until finance committee can look at the unaudited actuals. That will be coming unfortunately after
Probably be
after our meeting, and move on the others that are obvious.
We certainly need to have a robust discussion at the board level. And if the board has a consensus that, among all of us, we're feeling okay with, taking a large chunk out of our, late account and putting it in there, then we'll have a vote on it and go from there.
Would you like to wait until we get the audited information or have it next week?
Well, it certainly would make sense if it's available to us and we make decisions without having looked at it and something gets flushed down the toilet, they'd say, well, why the hell didn't you, you know?
Yeah,
And I'm not trying to be overly cautious here, but at the end of the day, as I said before,
Yeah.
we're not in the business of earning interest. We have a duty to do the best that we can and be reasonable, but we're in the business of trying to provide some health services to our community.
Mhm.
Heaven forbid that we should put some of that money at risk. And that would be a sin, in my opinion, so.
So should we wait until the July meeting to bring it to our board colleagues, and we will have a chance to look at this added information at our next finance meeting?
As opposed to making I think we should make a recommendation to the board. That we need to have a discussion about. Are you willing to put some money into class right now? A large amount of money. We certainly need to go ahead and put some money in there now. I looked at the account, it's all open. I logged into it and it says 0. Yeah, I get all that. But let's put something in there to make it a legitimate account. And I'm suggesting $10,000. But then let's have the board have a discussion, and once all of us put our heads together this next week and have a chance to discuss it. If there's a comfort level, then let's put $500,000, let's put half of the account in there. Let's not wait and do it.
Mhm.
That's where I'm going.
So we won't have the added information before next
We
week.
won't, and the board will be able to make a decision based upon the absence of that information. And it can make the decision that we will wait until we get all that information. Because the board has the option of saying, you know, we're gonna be losing the potential of all this interest income until we see whatever we get and get together again. And the board may decide, you know, we'll roll the dice and let's go ahead and put the money in there. And then when we get the financial statements, if we go, oh my goodness, what do we do? That's where I'm going.
Okay, I can follow that lead. Okay.
So,
Yeah, so obviously, once we get the follow-up number from California class, we can expect to bring that to the July finance meeting, since we know that we won't get it for next week's meeting. And then we'll just move on whatever action is decided next week as well.
Right.
and the board may be in a position after a discussion that, next week, we'll have a chance as a finance committee to look at the numbers, look at the report that we'll be getting. And the board may say, you know, finance committee, you make the call. Once you see the financial statements, don't wait for the board meeting, just go and do it.
Okay, sounds good.
Sounds
A
good.
way forward.
So we are okay in putting some money into 5-star?
Yep.
Okay.
And we're good with, setting up Pacific Western Bank to also be ready for us to move forward. And then we'll wait and see for next week to talk about whatever California class may look like.
Mhm.
If there's some or any or a lot, whatever, that can be next week's conversation. And then we can also follow that up in July based on next week's meeting. That's no problem.
All right.
So then the only other discussion item we have on there is the updated investment policy, which is really much more ministerial in process than true discussion. We typically update this policy on an annual basis. What we did this year is you received the red line version and such. From a process standpoint, we took this policy, we went to CSDA's finance team to see how others are doing their investment policy. They made some recommendations to update ours. Essentially, it's the same legal language. It doesn't really change anything. It streamlined ours a little bit. Before we had some very deep listings of, well, this tool or that tool or this tool or that tool. They said, why are you doing that? You're following California code. As long as you're California code, you're being redundant by listing this out. So we took that out. We sent it over to Jeff to make sure that he was giving it his legal blessing. He actually preferred the streamlined version. So hence it was put into your packet for review as well. Again, it's something we do annually. Typically, you don't have the history. I think we did it in December.
No, it's sometime in June, July. I thought.
Was it June or July?
Oh, no, you're right. It was a little delayed. We wanted it in June or July.
We wanted it in June and July so that it would fall with the start of each fiscal year, instead of somehow doing the calendar year, which we don't do for very many things.
Shouldn't this be for our 23-24 fiscal year?
Yes, that's why this is just the red line version. So we would update the 23-24. We would put the day 23.
Okay.
I'm sorry, which direction you want me to go?
You're fine where you
Okay.
are. You're fine where you are. The red line version they have in their packet that showed the big table and such.
Mhm.
But yeah, before we moved this, if you're amenable, before we move this from finance to board meeting next week, we would make sure that the dates and the resolution information would match for this upcoming fiscal year.
Okay.
It's not really one that we get creative writing on.
No. Now, I think that reference, reducing this to the reference of the California code is a good move. It just streamlines it, as you said, and reads better, and brevity with meaning is gold. So,
You're less likely to run into an unexpected contradiction.
Yeah.
Especially if code somehow changed. But again, since CSDA does this for several hundred special districts, and Jeff was also happy that we sent it through to CSDA. So.
now, we good
I'm good.
with that? Yeah.
All right, so we'll make those edits as far as the dates and give the board meeting date as the resolution date. And then we'll have that as an action item at the board meeting.
Mhm.
That's about it.
That's the only info I have to bring forward to you, from the discussion items.
Okay. All right. Hearing no additional new business, I think we can call this meeting adjourned.
All right, excellent.
Do I need to slap the gavel or anything?
Only if you feel compelled.
I'm never compelled to.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate, thank